Can you hear that squeaking?
Is that the squeaky stair?
Yeah, it's a new toy he's squeaking on.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here, and just like every other music outlet does at the end of June, we're doing a quick little check-in, let you know some of our favorite albums of the year so far. We're each going to throw out 5 honorable mentions and then give you some of our front-runner album of the year contenders to this point. It's been an okay year so far, not one of the best, but there's still lots of good stuff. I got I think 32 at 4 stars and up, so I listened to 124. So
Graham's not feeling it, clearly.
No, it's been. I think so far it's the weakest year since we started the channel. To be honest, I don't got any fives. I've listened to 66 albums so far, and I only have 14 3.5 and up. So, but a lot of that's the assignments that we had for the channel have turned out to be kind of duds and all that. So
it's been a terrible year for everybody. Probably it's either this or 2021. Probably the worst years for me. I've listened to 82 albums so far, and I do have 25 at 4 stars or above, but a lot of them are just like barely hanging on to 4 stars and might not stay there. And I haven't had a ton of albums where I just like can't wait to go back to. So kind of a weak year for sure.
how many of you got up to 4.5, Joe?
2.
I've got 5 and no 5s. So
0 5s. Nothing even close for me.
If the year continues basically as it has, it would be the weakest of since we started the channel and the weakest of the decade so far. But I'm hopeful. There's some things on the horizon that I have high hopes for. So we will see how the second half goes. But even with all that kind of little bit of negativity there, still a lot of cool stuff to let you know about. Maybe you've missed some of these. We can fill in some of those gaps for you. So who wants to kick it off?
5 honorable mentions for this year. We'll start with one that was my favorite for a while. It was a bad start to the year, but this one stood out. Turn the Car Around, Gaz Coombs. Him just getting back to more of an accessible sound. It's not quite super grass, but it's pretty darn good. I've won from a band I don't really know how to pronounce. It's HMLTD. To me it looks like Hamilton, which would be a terrible band name. So I don't know how the hell they pronounce it. But the album is The Worm, and they really flogged this concept of like the worm, this giant worm eating England, but the worm is just his depression. And it kind of works, kind of doesn't, but the music is pretty cool. It's like jazzy, progressive, interesting sound. I got another I know how to pronounce this artist name, but I don't really know how to pronounce this album title. It's Suzanne Sunfor with Blomi. Amlami. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a real good album. She's got a great, lovely, shimmering Scandinavian, Norwegian pop sound. And she kind of dips back into like the 70s female singer-songwriter tradition, a little bit of Joni and Laura Nyro, stuff like that. And it's really great. Then we'll do a band that me and Jason saw recently, Lemon Twigs, with Everything Harmony. It's more straightforward for them. It's less kind of weird, but it's just really good, like well-written tunes that sound like they're straight out of 1972, 1970. And finally, an album that's getting a lot of attention and people are giving really high marks, and maybe it's because they just lost an important band member, but I think it's a pretty darn good album from the Foo Fighters. But Here We Are. I would say it's definitely their best since Wasting Light, and a lot of it I think harkens back to like the best period of Foo Fighters, which is 95, 99. Nothing Left to Lose, and Color and Shape. And I mean, there's some songs on here with Dave Grohl drumming again, and it's pretty pretty freaking great. Him channeling his sadness and heartbreak over the death of Taylor Hawkins into some really good music.
All right, I'll throw in my honorable mentions. This necessarily is not going to fall into a list of what are my front runners. I'm not giving away any star ratings or any rankings or placements right now. So throwing out an honorable mentions just for the sake of talking about newer stuff. I'm going to put out a couple albums that are definitely my top 10, but we already talked about on the channel. I'm putting out Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard by Lana Del Rey. So you can check out that video review. And we also got The Stupid World by Yola Tango, also in my top 10. We have a video for that as well. And then including the other three, I've got All of This Will End by Indigo D'Souza. She topped into my top 10 last year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago. This one's a little sunnier sounding, still kind of full of venom, less fantastical, and a bit more grounded with more like mainstream, robust sound, but the spirit is still there and probably more flavor on the vocals even on this one. Then I'm also going to go with the beloved kind of modern pop, art pop sensation of Desire I Want to Turn Into You by Caroline Polachek. Throwing back to like a 2011 kind of pop album with like Grimes and sort of like the more experimental like Ellie Goulding and stuff, and the production behind those early Charlie XCX albums. Very cool. And then also an honorable mention to First Two Pages of Frankenstein, which is kind of what you expect from the National, but really strong, just beautiful epic compositions, and they're like arena rock kind of vibe. Nothing too fancy, but the lyrics are great. Everything is big and robust and emotional. So those are my 5 that are in the top 10 as of now.
All right, my 5 honorable mentions in no particular order. I've got one that just came out this past Friday. The bizarrely titled Western Come from Corey Hansen. It's got a weird album title. The cover's weird. There's a lot of really funny lyrics on the record, but the music's really cool. Kind of like sort of like cosmic American music turned up to 11. A lot of like jammy, cool indie rock type of guitars, but playing more traditional type of music. Then I've got friend of the channel, Foreground Music from Ron Gallo. Really cool record, really great lyrics on that one, and a lot of good rock and roll. And then going with a longtime favorite of mine, my 2016 Album of the Year winner, I've got Norm by Andy Schaaf. Just really more really interesting songwriting from him, kind of a character study, talking about this guy Norm. Some great tunes, great lyrics, and his strong suit, the arrangements, always really interesting. Then I've got Every Acre by Heather McIntyre, H.C. McIntyre. Just a good Americana kind of country rock thing. She was the front woman for a band called Mount Moriah. This is her, I think, 3rd solo record. Really good. Some great guitar playing on it as well. And then kind of out of left field for me, but a record that really surprised me and that I really loved. I've got Nostalgia by Enforcer, which is like this throwback 80s metal record. It's kind of like part thrash, part hair metal. A lot of fun and some of my favorite guitar playing of the year. All right, now the real ones, the top 5 albums so far.
All right, my top 5 for the year. This is an interesting list. It's very Joe core, I think. Not too many surprises from me on the year so far. This album, it's got a lot of detractors, and it's not a cool band, but I think Life Is But a Dream from Avenged Sevenfold is a pretty cool album. Sort of, it reminds me of like Mr. Bungle mixed with Dream Theater, mixed with Daft Punk, with like a little Stone Temple Pilots in there. And it's just really interesting the way this band, which was, like metalcore back in the 2000s, kind of turned into a prog rock band, and now they're going like this weird direction where there's like really synthy pop songs and some crazy synth solos. And the next song has, the Dream Theater like John Petrucci-esque, sweet picking and is all over the place. And I just think it's probably the most interesting and progressive rock album of the year because it's doesn't sound like anything else I've heard, and they're kind of pushing the envelope. And it's not always successful. There's some really weird choices, especially with the vocals. But I find myself going back to it a lot. My next one is "Scaring the Hose" by JPEG Mafia, and this is sort of I mean, it's a rap album that's just like completely made up of all these samples, and has some weird. I don't even know how to describe this type of rap because I'm so out of like the rap game. But it's like this freaky rap combination. I don't even know. I can't describe what it is. I should have looked up what they describe themselves like. Acid rap. I don't even know. It's just really weird, but I think the way they cut everything together is really cool and interesting, and it's probably my favorite rap album I've heard in like a decade more since like Kanye West was at the top of his game. So it's insanity. It feels like anything could happen at any time, and like they sample like the 1983 Famicom Sports Collection commercial and Procession of the Levites and an NSYNC song. So it's bizarre, but you gotta listen to it. Also on my list, I got That Feels Good from Jessie Ware. I mean, she was a big deal, and her last album kind of left me like, I don't really see it. But this album, I get it's kind of like Renaissance for white people. Like it feels like sort of like dabbling in a bunch of different dance music styles. Like there's some disco and funk and like 90s pop and just all of this stuff. And she does them all very well. And it's just a really fun record. And then we also got Memento Mori from Depeche Mode, which again, my favorite Depeche Mode album. And I think it's because like they don't do any of that like sort of pretentious industrial like gothic like just add-ons and weird noises that add nothing to the songs. Like this is just them writing pop hooks. And I think they all sound really good. I think David and Alan sound great on vocals. I love the synth sounds. I think they do a really good job of bringing back the 80s while also updating a little bit enough. And yeah, I'm super impressed with Memento Mori, and my enthusiasm for it really hasn't dipped from the review that we did, where I gave it 4.5 stars. It's still there for me. And then also one of my favorite artists of the last 10 years or so, BC Camplight, with his Last Rotation of the Earth. And I just love who he is and his ethos and what he brings as a lyricist. Very self-deprecating humor, very sort of like tragic, woe is me, but always funny. He's always breaking the fourth wall. And he's one of these guys that can just write the most heartbreakingly beautiful little melody and an incredible vocal arrangement, and then just like twist it away and throw it away and have like this really kind of ugly, harsh noise kind of coming in and like taking you right out of it. And the way he just weaves it all together, I think it's pretty much another masterpiece from him. And yeah, I would imagine it'll be staying in my top five. I don't know about anything else. I don't know if I'm totally sold on anything else, but I feel like BC Camplight's gonna stay up there.
I want to like BC Camplight more than I do, and I liked the Jessie Ware album quite a lot, but it still didn't blow me away as much as critics are blown away by it. 5 albums for me in contention for album of the year. I, like Jason, have Norm by Andy Schaaf. Really kind of eerie and elderly sounding in a way. Like it sounds kind of like the unraveling, like loose step in a stairwell, or bunch of like broomed up cobwebs or squeaky floorboards. There's like an older essence to the sound here. It's like a senior perspective on Love retold through like a slightly modernized lens. I think it's gorgeous, and Schaff is such a master songwriter. He even enveloped some older singer tendencies, like almost Perry Como at times, or Ricky Nelson vibes with like that sweetheartedness at times, but he still has that classic, like delicate whisper storyteller vibe. I think very Paul Simon like. Just a beautiful, lucrative storyteller on this album. I like the mix of some lively, more pop elements at times, like in Halloween Store, getting a little bit of synth in there. His vocals are on point, descriptive as hell as a storyteller, and gentle and awkward and lovely. And you get some moments of like 70s esque pop rock, light and like daylight dreaming, almost has like a super tramp guitar kind of sounds. But at the heart, a lot of them are just kind of like jazzier compositions on piano, which is cool. I've also got one that is anti Joe in every essence. I've got Oh Monolith by Squid, the pop post punk fever dream here, but with really cool melodic maneuvers. Percussion and production on it are amazing. The way certain things are accented on the percussion, I love. It just creates such anxiety. The record has moments of like beauty and complexity, and like the seamless, like frantic impulse can become simple and crazy at the same time. Has flashes of like experimental jazz like injections. But to me, the thing that I really love is like just the really tight, highly calculated bursts of chaos and post punk indulgence. This album to me, I think, is kind of a players type of album, like the way everything like almost like operates like a math rock album without the math rock elements to it, just like moments of craziness and like sophisticated loops and patterns, and then coming real grounded again. So cool, and it's all kind of under this like skewed umbrella of jamminess. Very cool. Then I've got Blonde Shell by Blonde Shell, which I really liked. It's very much in my wheelhouse. It's got like that kind of sad girl indie rock pop to it, but it's this one's really bold and beautiful, garage pop record a la the mid 90s. Not too unlike the next record I'll talk about, but this one definitely more grunge and rough around the edges. Very awesome, messy guitar and noise rock influences guitar work. Album is sweet in nature, even though it tries very hard to just like give you a black eye. I love the song Kiss City. Olympus, the song is really great, as this beautiful little butterfly like guitar piece in the chorus that bends into the solo that's really understated and great. I just love some of the guitar tones on here, really throwback, like on the song Sepsis. Very much a wheelhouse album, like I said, just like my next pick, which is The Record by Boy Genius. I think it's great, an all-star cast. I think Phoebe Bridgers kind of getting the most vision here. It sounds most like one of her records to me, but everyone has their moment. It's mellow but electric in its poetry, just great lyrics. The songs are really beautiful and they have this great purifying dynamic, really soul cleansing at times, and their sensations, like the way it brightens up Wide Open in True Blues chorus. Lots of, mopey relationship stuff, but brought to life like a wide open diary explosion. Kind of what you would expect from these cast of characters, but it's very cool. I really like the simplicity in the lyrics with just like that sad, soft spoken delivery, like in Revolution Zero when she sings "I don't want to get sick." You really just feel it. Satanist is my favorite song. The album has almost like this cool skateboarders 90s slacker rock vibe to it. But at the end of the day, it's sweetheart pop throughout. They're indie lonesome like Dove Filter. In Satanist, you get the line, "Will you be a nihilist with me?" It's so like classic indie rock, like throwback from like 20 years ago, but it works so hard. Anti Curse is one of the best songs on the album, one of the catchiest songs, and it comes later in the record. I wish more songs kind of doubled down with really poppy stuff toward the record the way that this one does. And then finally, a sleeper candidate, which probably wouldn't have made it if I hadn't gone to this concert a couple years ago. I've got the new tallest man on earth, Henry Street. Incredible live. I had heard some of his stuff, and it's one of those things where like I heard his stuff and liked it, went and saw him live, was blown away, went back to the stuff and like kind of got it even more. And this one really blew me away. You get a lot of that like weird open tuning, finger picking, like decadence. Gets better with every album. He's just so good at creating these simple, big, beautiful parts, almost like a modern Nick Drake in that kind of way. I feel like there's just this weakness to his voice on this album too, and just such a pretty perspective on everything. I love the low end on this album. It's deliberately paid attention to with the way he does the songs. Like, when he's doing his finger picking, like the thumb work is really amplified and you can really hear it, so that every little like change in the bass note and the root note really hits home. Um, and his voice is mixed kind of backstage a little bit, which is really cool. Percussion's very understated, very well done. In many ways, not too different from his other stuff, but there's a perfection to everything on this album. I think it's just the most finely crafted from what I've known. And I am still new to his stuff. I need a lot of more time with it. But there's really good folksiness and realness to the album. Great use of electric band behind it at times. And his voice, he sings a little bit like a Dylan ripoff, but it works. The mystique is there, and the presentation is different enough for a unique experience. So I really love this album.
Okay, time for my top 5. No particular order. Actually, a particular order. I'm going to do these chronologically from the earliest. The first one that came out this year, back in February, Spectra by Jenny O. Really cool record. Jenny plays most of the instruments herself, except for the drums. There might be like one other guest musician on it, but most of the record's her. It's basically like an indie pop record, but it takes all these kind of twists and turns, and every song is really different and unique. There's touches of psych on it. You've got a really cool R&B slow jam in the song Prism. There's some like jangly pop, power pop. You've got this weird kind of like chant a cappella interlude thing in the middle of the record called There Is a Club. There's some new wave stuff, some synth coming in. So it kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit. All the songs are really catchy, good hooks, and all the songs work together, even though they're different. It doesn't jar you around. It all works and it flows well. It's an inward-looking album. The write-up from her label calls it a manual from the soul on how to love practically and unconditionally in all directions. But it's just a good record, good songs, good singing. Really talented player. She's classically trained composer, double bass player. She studied jazz, so it just works. I think it's really good. My next one came out in April. It is Rat Saw God by Wednesday. Just love it. It's like part fuzzed out 90s slacker rock throwback, but it's also like part country band. Kind of an interesting combination, and I wouldn't really even call it like alt country. I think the way that they're combining country and like heavier guitar rock is really unique, and it feels really fresh to me. It doesn't feel like another alt country band. I think they're doing something a little more interesting, and it just works so well. The way they kind of like deftly jump back and forth between the two sounds and at times weave them together. You can go from lead singer Carly Hartzman screaming at the top of her lungs, like sounding like she's shredding her vocal cords on a song like Bull Believer. And then a minute later, they're in kind of like this intimate storytelling mode. I just think it's really, really cool what they're doing. Just a really cool record, really great guitar all over it. MJ Lenderman, I think, is a really cool guitar player. He put out a great record of his own a couple years ago. If you're familiar with that, he is in this band as well. I think there's great songwriting, great production. The sound of it is really big and full, and just a really cathartic, awesome rock and roll record. And then another record that came out on the exact same day as that one, I've got the self-titled record from Niku Palu, a Portuguese singer coming by way of Canada. Just a really gorgeous, warm, lush record, wonderfully arranged and recorded, but her voice is just what steals the show here. Really cool, husky, breathy, but also really able to take flight and soar at the same time. Reminds me a bit of Casey Johansson and Nadia Reid, for listeners familiar with them. But also in the liner notes of the record, she credits Feist and Gal Costa and Nico and Victoria Legrand of Beach House as being influences on her. And I think you can hear all of that in her voice. It's a singer-songwriter record, but it's a singer-songwriter record that reaches like way beyond your basic like folky coffee shop type of thing. The influencers are really diverse, really worldly. Between her Portuguese singing, you get touches of that like Brazilian influence. You get jazzy influences. There's touches of indie rock and really lush, ornate arrangements. So just a really, really beautiful record. My next one came out in early May, and it's one that Joe had in his honorable mentions. It is Everything Harmony by Lemon Twigs. And this is an interesting one because this is probably my least favorite Lemon Twigs record. I think they lose a little something on this record by dialing back the energy and the quirks, and a lot of that stuff has been stripped away. I think it loses a little personality. But at the same time, the songs are so well crafted, so refined. It's just still really, really good songs. It's about like as good as you could do this sound. I think the accuracy with which they like nail this particular era of pop rock is just unreal. They're pretty much all perfect pop gems, just one after another. So if you like late 60s, early 70s soft rock with like a touch of power pop in there, this will be right up your alley. And then my last one came out in early June, a couple weeks ago. It is Folkocracy by Rufus Wainwright. And I'm a big Rufus fan. He made my top 10 a couple years ago and made a couple other top fives in the past. I really like him. He made my top singers list already. So no secret that I'm a fan, but actually I had pretty low expectations for this. For a record of covers that's full of guests, and the guest list wasn't exactly like exciting to me. So I was like, I'll listen to it because I like him, but I'm not expecting a lot. I figured it would be like a mixed bag and there'd be like a couple really good songs. That was basically how I went into it. But it is just so incredibly well done. Every guest just nails it. No one oversins. No one tries to prove themselves beyond the songs. Even guests like Nicole Scherzinger from Pussycat Dolls and John Legend, their performances are stellar. It is so well put together. Everybody's perfectly cast. The instrumentation is gorgeous. The pacing of it is perfect. It feels like an album. It doesn't feel like a hodgepodge. It doesn't feel chaotic with different people coming in and all these different voices. Everything is in its right place. And I think for an album like this to be this good is completely stunning. And I think it's really, really beautiful record. And I can't recommend it enough. And actually, John Legend's vocal performance on this record might be the highlight of it for me. And I typically do not like him.
Interesting covers. What kind of covers are on the album?
There's different kinds. It's mostly like old folk songs that they're reworking. There's at least one reworking of an old Rufus song. So yeah, it's really good. Cram's continued love of Andy Schaaf continues to surprise me. I was shocked when he had him in the top 5 before, and that is like so Jason core that it's unbelievable to me that he's as into him as he is.
He's great. I mean, I love it. I love all the stuff I've gone back to. I was looking forward to this one, and yeah, it's solidly up there. I think he's perfect. I never finished the Western album or the Wednesday album, excuse me, because I just like got off the train before I finished it and never went back to it. But I really did like what I heard. It was very like, and you're right. I did read that it was like alt country, but it's not really at all. You just don't really know what chapter to put it in, and so that's where you put it in. But it's different. It's very cool.
All right, everyone, let us know what your favorite records of the year have been so far. I'm sure there's a lot of cool ones that we've missed. So if you drop them down in the comments, we can make sure we hit them before the end of the year. If you check out any of these records that we talked about, let us know what you think of them. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.